Despite the posthumous George Cross you received and the sculpture erected in her honour in London's Gordon Square Gardens, Noor Inayat Khan isn't exactly a household name. She was half American, half Indian, Sufi, pacifist, and a children's writer who became the first female wireless operator to infiltrate Nazi-occupied Paris. Her life would make a great movie, a great thriller, but you wouldn't imagine it being told in the form of dance. But that's exactly what you'll see on Tuesday night in Edinburgh's Storytelling Centre. Artistic director of Labyrinth Dance Theatre, Sasha Spielvogel, is behind Noor, and I'll speak to her in a moment. But first, let's get a flavour of the production.
QRM. Interference is bad. I am forced to stop transmitting because of imminent danger. QSM.
Gosh, I mean, sounds just like a film score. Very, very dramatic. Sasha, first we want to hear about Noor. Who was this extraordinary person? So tell us a bit about her background, her father, where she lived, that kind of thing.
Well, she was born on January 1st, 1914, actually in Russia. And as you mentioned, her father was Indian. He was Hazrat Inayat Khan, who was a classical Hindustani musician and brought Sufism to the West. And her mother was American. And as a quick aside, her father played actually for Mata Hari, the spy.
Oh, gosh.
So it's kind of an interesting confluence because his daughter grew up to be a spy, but I will say right off, not the kind of spy that Mata Hari was. So Noor was brought up with pacifism, a loving, kind, spiritual household. She wrote poetry and she wrote music. She studied with Nadia Boulanger, and they lived in, I believe they lived in London, and then they moved to Suresnes, her family house, which is still there. It's called Fazl Manzil, House of Blessing. And when the Nazis invaded in 1940, the family fled to London, and they lived on Taviton Street near Gordon Square, where the sculpture by Karen Newman was unveiled on November 8th.
So how does a Sufi pacifist with that kind of background get involved in the war effort? I mean, was it a contradiction in her beliefs?
It was, and she really had to find her inner strength to become proactive for the war because her upbringing, they weren't required to do anything in this way, but she wanted to save Jews and victims of Nazi oppression because really the kind of Sufism that her father brought was to be open and respectful to all religions and that every way is valid and all rivers flow into the sea. So she felt she had to do something proactive, that it was the moral and right thing to do. So,
and what happened to her, having made this very, very brave decision? What then became of her?
Well, this is her story. She kind of was recruited into the SOE, Special Operations Executive. She had been a nurse. She trained more, the word isn't really benignly, but she was a nurse and it wasn't as interesting to her. So she felt she wanted to do something more active, and she was very good in Morse code. So she was the first woman wireless operator covertly landed into Nazi-occupied Paris. And really, as she landed, her spy ring was blown. But she rose to the cause. She often did the work of 6 operators. And she really was betrayed by a woman who was jealous of her. She could have gotten out of Paris. She was told to get out of Paris, but she felt she wanted to do this and stay. So she was taken prisoner to Avenue Foch, 84 Avenue Foch in Paris. She made 2 daring escape attempts. And she would not sign anything that said she wouldn't escape anymore because her upbringing was not to lie. She just couldn't do it. And so they labeled her a most dangerous prisoner, Nacht und Nebel, night and fog, return not required. So she was taken to prison, chained hand and hand, foot and foot, and then together, like stuck. And solitary confinement for 10 months. And then just as I guess the Allies were advancing and Hitler wanted to kill off all the spies who kind of knew intimately what he was all about. So she was taken with 3 other SOE agents and shot at Dachau. And there's a plaque actually to the left of the crematorium that names them and I guess honors them.
Now, it's a heartbreaking story, Sasha.
It is.
But why a dance piece to capture the majesty and the terror of it? Because, I mean, this was a wonderful woman. What
yes,
a
she was
tragic end.
lovely and kind and loving and sweet. Everyone loved her. Actually, I also want to say when she was shot, when the man who was her interrogator and captor on 84 Avenue Foch learned of her death, he actually wept because he knew what a beautiful person she was. And he said, I would have loved to have been her friend had the circumstances been different.
So tell us about your dance piece. I mean, is it meant to interpret her? Is it her dancing we're seeing?
What I want to say is the woman who, it's a 40-minute solo for Felicia Norton, who's an extraordinarily beautiful dancer, and we had done many other projects together, and she is a Sufi. So she came to me with the idea of doing something about Noor, and she knew of Noor, but she didn't know that much about her story. And actually, she trained in Sufism with Noor's brother, Pir Vilayat Khan. So Noor, who was shot at Dachau in 1944, her brother died about 8 years ago, so he lived into his 80s. And we just started to read these books about her. Just as we progressed, it just got more and more interesting. So we said, we have to do this dance together. And so our personal connection is because Felicia's connection to Noor's brother.
Tell us a bit about the sounds, the music, that extraordinary film track we heard.
Yes, I was going to say it's created by David Meislin and myself. We kind of wrote it together. He's a composer. He's Emmy nominated. And it's interesting, of course, you picked up that it sounds filmic because he does a lot of film scores. And so we wanted to incorporate her poems, her actual music composition, Hitler, Churchill. We just put a Tagore poem into it, and actually accounts of the people who trained her in SOE. Half of the people thought she was too delicate and kind to be a spy, and the other half had full confidence in her. And just we're kind of weaving it in this stream of conscious, surreal way where you hear the people talking about her, you hear her thoughts, you hear this music, and we have Edith Piaf in it and David Meislin's own music kind
Wonderful.
of just woven.
And
yeah.
Sasha, your role, I mean, this sounds like a real passion, vocational thing to you. I mean, quickly, how come?
Because I believe in Noor and what she did, and my father escaped from the Holocaust from Vienna, and he actually ended up in Shandon Terrace for a year. He went to the College of Arts in Edinburgh, and I feel through dance there's a great opportunity to help repair the world. And the name of my dance company is Labyrinth Dance Theater, which is the idea you go into the darkness of the unknown, you confront your demons, you face them if you can, you learn from them. Hopefully you're all the more stronger to know about yourself and the world, and then you emerge to a point of light.
Well, it's going to be wonderful being a part of all of that. Thank you so much, Sasha Spielvogel. And Noor is on at the Scottish Storytelling Centre in Edinburgh Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. It's part of Edinburgh International Festival of Middle Eastern Spirituality and Peace. Sasha, again, lovely talking to you.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here, Richard.